Early life and struggles. Malcolm Little was born on May 19, 1925, in Omaha, Nebraska, to Earl and Louise Little. His early life, however, was anything but peaceful. His father, a staunch follower of Marcus Garvey's black nationalist movement, was a target of white supremacists. The family faced constant harassment from the Ku Klux Klan, a terror that would only escalate as they moved to Lansing, Michigan, when Malcolm was just a toddler. It was here that the seeds of tragedy were planted. When Malcolm was 6, his world shattered. His father, Earl, was found dead, brutally struck by a streetcar. The official story was that he had died in a hit-and-run accident, but many believed it was murder, an act of racial violence. The pain of his father's death left an indelible mark on Malcolm. His mother, devastated by the loss, sank into mental illness and was eventually placed in a psychiatric institution. At just 13 years old, Malcolm found himself without the support of either parent, sent into foster care, and faced with an unforgiving world that was determined to deny him his place in it. His early years in foster care were marked by neglect and isolation. The system, designed to help children like him, did little more than fuel his anger. He bounced from one home to another, never truly belonging anywhere. But it was in these formative years that he learned the harsh realities of racism. Every day, he was reminded of the inferiority that society imposed on him, a young black boy in a white-dominated world. His education was limited, and by the time he reached high school, he was expelled for his behavior, an act of defiance against a system that had never been kind to him. Malcolm's frustrations found an outlet in the streets. At 16, he moved to Boston, where he quickly fell into a life of crime. The city was a labyrinth of temptation, and Malcolm, hungry for identity and belonging, became entangled in a world of drugs, theft, and gang activity. He was drawn to the thrill of it all, the sense of power that came from doing what society told him he couldn't. Yet, beneath the bravado, there was a profound sense of emptiness. His life was spiraling, and he could see no way out. It was during this turbulent time, in the depths of his despair, that Malcolm encountered the ideology that would reshape his existence. It came not from the streets, but from a prison cell. Convicted of burglary and sentenced to 10 years in prison, Malcolm found himself at a crossroads. In the confines of a cold cell, he began to read voraciously, devouring books on history, race, and religion. This was where his transformation began, a spark ignited by the words of a mentor who would lead him to the Nation of Islam. The path ahead was unclear, but for the first time, Malcolm saw the possibility of change. He no longer had to accept the world as it had been handed to him. A new chapter was about to begin, and the man who had once been lost in a cycle of violence and despair would soon find his purpose. The world outside had always been unforgiving, but Malcolm now had the tools to face it, not with anger alone, but with a newfound understanding of his own worth. As the section draws to a close, the sense of hope is palpable, but it is tempered with the recognition that the real battle is yet to come. Malcolm Little's journey was only just beginning. Transformation through prison and the Nation of Islam. Prison, for Malcolm Little, was not merely a place of punishment, it was the crucible of his transformation. The man who had once lived in the chaotic grip of crime and rage now faced a stillness that was both alien and unsettling. But it was in this solitude that Malcolm began to confront the deepest parts of himself. Initially, his thoughts were consumed by bitterness, a reflection of the world that had broken him. Yet, slowly, this darkness gave way to a thirst for knowledge. In the quiet of his cell, he began reading voraciously, books on history, philosophy, and the works of black scholars. Each word was a stepping stone, drawing him away from the person he had been and toward someone new. It was during this period of intellectual awakening that Malcolm encountered the teachings of the Nation of Islam, NOI. A letter from his brother Reginald, who had already converted to the nation, reached him, introducing the idea of a faith that could offer black people not only a spiritual home but also a path to empowerment. The message was clear: the white man was the enemy, and black people had to reclaim their power, dignity, and identity. Malcolm, with his raw hunger for meaning, absorbed the teachings, and for the first time, he found a sense of purpose. The oppressive world that had once defined him now seemed conquerable through the strength of self-belief and the unity of the black community. Through the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Nation of Islam, Malcolm's worldview shifted. He discarded his slave name, adopting the surname X, to symbolize the lost heritage of his ancestors. This was not just a name change, it was an act of reclamation, a declaration that he would no longer be defined by the legacy of oppression. He became a devout follower, committing himself to the principles of the nation: self-reliance, pride in black identity, and the rejection of the corruption of the white man's society. Upon his release from prison, Malcolm was a transformed man. He no longer saw himself as a victim of his circumstances. He was a warrior for a cause greater than himself. The Nation of Islam, with its message of black empowerment and separatism, gave him the platform he needed to challenge the racial injustice that permeated American society. His eloquent speeches, filled with fiery passion and unwavering conviction, resonated deeply with African Americans who, like him, had been marginalized and silenced. In a country that had long dehumanized black people, Malcolm X's words were a call to arms, a reminder that they had a right to stand tall and demand their dignity. However, his rise within the nation was not without its challenges. His forceful rhetoric, which often called for self-defense and black separation, alienated many within the civil rights movement, who favored nonviolence and integration. Malcolm's refusal to compromise on his beliefs made him a divisive figure. While his supporters hailed him as a revolutionary, his critics labeled him an extremist. But none of this deterred Malcolm. He understood that revolution could never come without sacrifice. His mission was clear, and he was willing to face whatever came his way. As he stood on the precipice of a larger stage, Malcolm X knew that his transformation was far from complete. The struggle for justice was not one man's fight, but a collective one. His journey had only just begun, and the path ahead would challenge everything he believed in, and change him forever. The section ends with the promise of a new chapter in Malcolm's life, one that would push him beyond the confines of the Nation of Islam and force him to confront questions that he had never imagined.